What was your "this person is on another level of stupid" moment? Dude burned down his convenience store for an insurance claim and stopped the milk and bread deliveries the day before. Demolished my right foot in a motorcycle crash and had to have the top of my foot removed. Guy I worked with asked me when it would grow back. I explained that the skin and stuff was going to have to be grafted, but the tendons and bones that had been removed were gone forever. He looked me dead in the eye and asked, "Why don't they just cut the whole thing off and let it grow back?" Going through security and the person says I need to show a different form of ID. I ask why. Because I gave them my driver's license. They say I need a US document like a green card or something. I'm a US citizen. Then I realized. I explained how District of Columbia is long for DC, like Washington, D.C., as in the capital of our country. Coworker bought a low-flow shower head. He filled the bathtub using the new low-flow shower head because it would use less water. While driving from one big city to another, I stopped in a small town to eat at a fast food chain in Texas. I order my food, get my orange number tent, and sit down to wait for my order. The lady who's bringing out orders has this "I give up" demeanor as she's calling out numbers that guests aren't claiming. Each time this happens, she speaks to a couple tables to seemingly figure out who food is for. Then I hear her call for number 55 while holding a tray of food for one person. I was number 54 and noticed I was the only single party guest there. We make eye contact and she heads towards me. She confirms my order with me and says, "Sorry. For some reason the computer prints one number higher." I immediately ask, "Well then why don't you just call out one number lower than what's printed?" She freezes, and I can see the gears turning in her head. I tell her, "Thank you," and she goes on her way. I'm an identical twin, and have been asked all manner of utterly ridiculous questions about it throughout my life. But I think the stupidest was when a girl once asked me, "Do you ever get yourselves mixed up with each other?" I responded, "Are you asking me if I ever sometimes think I'm my brother?" She replied, "Yeah, no, I don't." When I was in middle school, I was in art class with a boy named Devin. I told him my sister has the same name as him, and he asked me what her name was. The time I watched someone who had missed their exit on the highway stop on the shoulder, back up, turn around, and go up the entrance ramp. I could not believe it. I work for Parks Canada in Yoho National Park. I have been asked the question, "Where do you keep the animals at night?" twice in my career. To this day, I still find great joy imagining what they thought was going on each night as we collected every large animal in the parks. I was a co-hostess with a girl in a restaurant, watching ads on a hanging TV for a new movie. At the end, it said, "Coming soon to a theater near you," to which she turned to me with wide eyes and genuinely asked, "How do they know where I live?" This was my first experience in retail where I learned what many customers would be like. Seasons were changing, so we put a lot of shirts we had to get rid of in the front and made them 50% off. I was working the register when a woman came up to buy her things. I rang her up and could see a look on her face like something was wrong. That's when the following happened. "Lady, why is this so much?" Me, "Pardon me? Lady, this should only be $10, not 20. I thought that maybe her item was on sale, so I asked if she could point out the sign because I wasn't aware of it. It was a small store and we didn't have to walk anywhere. "Lady, this sign here." Me, "This sign says that all shirts are 50% off." Lady, "Yes. So why is this full price?" Me, "This is a hat." Back when the Fukushima nuclear power plant disaster happened, we were discussing how the reactor had failed in a science class. 5 minutes into the conversation, a girl piped up and said, "I don't see what the big deal is. Why can't we just regrow it?" She dead ass thought a nuclear power plant was a plant. Summer camp counselor made all the kids on a school bus keep the windows up on a hot day because they could feel the air conditioning coming from the front of the bus. It was so hot, and I, maybe 10 years old at the time, had to explain to the 40-year-old counselor that the air conditioning they were feeling was the wind coming in through the bus driver's open window. She still didn't believe me. I begged her to ask the bus driver to confirm the bus did not have air conditioning, but she didn't want to bother him while he was driving. It was like a 1-hour bus trip. She finally got hot enough and asked the bus driver if the bus had air conditioning, and he jokingly said, "The bus only has air conditioning when the windows are down and the wheels are turning." She then looked back at me and said, "See, I told you the bus had air conditioning," and proceeded to force us to keep the windows up. We asked our classmate to prove she knew the 7 continents. Her list went like this: North America, Europe, China, the Pacific Ocean. I kid you not. Watching a man try to open the locked front door of my shop, while a bright red closed sign was literally inches from his face. He kept looking at the door like it was just stuck. There was a girl in my high school who forced the teacher to pause a documentary about people living in mud huts in Africa because she was upset that they were showing us fictional movies in a history class. It took everyone else in the room to convince her that people actually live like that in some places. Wealthy area living for ya. I was friends with the guy who believed those fake Apple adverts like, "Apple Wave microwave your phone for instant battery charge." I was so dumbfounded that he actually fell for it. When I saw him the week after and he had a new phone, it all clicked for me. Knew a girl in middle school that didn't understand the concept of perspective. She also thought north was whichever direction you were facing at the time. How much is a $50 worth? She was the newest teller my boss hired. Will never forget that moment. Had someone ask me, "Is Europe on Earth?" A friend didn't have coins for a vending machine, but did have $1. She folded up the dollar and forced it into the coin slot and then did not understand why she did not get her item. For me, I had a concussion and was getting x-rays taken. They gave me a lead blanket to wrap around my twig and berries. I took it and wrapped it around me like a cape. I could not understand what they wanted me to do. I was helping a colleague with his graduate thesis film. My job was to animate a solar eclipse, since we couldn't shoot one for real. I animated it using some real-life reference footage to make it look realistic. When I showed him, he asked why the moon was black and had no detail. I asked him if he had ever seen a solar eclipse and he replied, "Yes, of course, but I want this one to look surreal since it's the moon in front of the sun. It's not like a normal solar eclipse." At this point, it became clear something was amiss, and after asking a few more clarifying questions it became clear he had no idea that the large object passing in front of the sun during a solar eclipse is, in fact, the moon. I confronted him about it, and he apologized for not being great with astrology. Not me, but a friend worked in a call center for a CC company in the disputes department. The number one item people called to say they never purchased: interest charge. I used to work with a girl who was sweet but so dumb. We were in a meeting once, and somehow someone mentioned baked ham. My manager said, "I hate ham. It looks like human flesh." The girl I mentioned was sitting next to me and looked horrified and whispered, "Does ham really come from people?" A group of late teens sitting outside my building assuring each other that all criminal charges would be dropped when they reached 21. DUIs, drug charges, traffic violations, everything. I walked away shaking my head because they were in for a reality check. At the time, I was working at a grocery store that had a Coinstar machine. Basically, you could place all of your unwrapped change in it, and it would be converted for a small fee that you could use for actual cash. I was walking past and noticed a woman struggle with the machine. I stopped to help her. Turns out she had accidentally hit Spanish as a language selection. I quickly explained what she needed to do, figuring she couldn't read Spanish, and this is where her struggles came from. So I run through how it works and show her where the receipt will print out that she can turn in at customer service for the cash. She turns and looks at me and says, "But I don't want Spanish money." Sigh. Then I have to explain to her that she would get paid in US dollars. Rescued a coworker on the side of the road with a flat tire, waiting for the tow truck. I pointed out the nail at the top of their tire. They scoffed and looked at me like I was the stupidest person in the world and exclaimed, "That's not true because it's flat at the bottom." I just walked away and never brought it up again. We were talking about the Irish potato famine in college, and this one girl said, "Oh wow, I thought it was the potato family," as if that wasn't enough. She later asked, why were they so eager to get jobs? If I was that hungry, I wouldn't even try to get a job. Man, I wish I was joking. I was once asked how it felt to come to the US as a refugee from Germany. She then looked rather surprised when I told her that Hitler has been dead for 75 years, and that Germany is one of the more liberal countries in the world these days. She full-on thought I fled Nazi Germany. I got a concussion a while back. A friend of mine told me not to come close because it might be contagious. They weren't kidding. I had to explain to a girl why you couldn't grow your hair down in front of your face and just cut out eye holes. Even explaining it her, she couldn't grasp it and brushed me off as being too smart. In high school, I met a boy who asked me for a hygienic cloth because he thought he had a period. Actually, he only sat on a melted popsicle. I worked at a pet store in college. This customer asked me which food would make his Pitbull swole. I suggested a high-protein food with a good amount of exercise, but advised that a lot of it was determined by the dog's genetics. He asked me if we sold genetics. I met a guy who got hit by a train. Not that bad. But a year later, he went to show his daughter where and how he got hit by the train, and he got hit again.